Hey, so I have a lot of questions from you guys in the chat, and also I have some from my emails. So I'm going to work through them as they have come in. And please chime in if you want me to elaborate or if you want me to follow up on anything that I am saying. This is kind of like an open forum, and I want this to be as helpful as possible. So I'm gonna also maybe as they're coming in, but I might combine questions or put them one after the other if they make sense to come in together. So the first question I thought would be good to kind of answer is this was a question from a parent who's not quite sure whether homeschooling is the right choice for their child or not. Um, And this is a really, really tough one for me to answer for all of you guys because I don't know your children. I don't know your children's schools. I don't know the specific circumstances. However, what I will say is if there is that question mark in your mind that homeschooling might be a better choice for your autistic child than where they are at right now and the situation they're in right now, this is probably something that is worth exploring for them. And I would let your gut kind of lead you where you think you need to be led. Okay. So I would definitely do some more research. And for me, really, I personally think it is more about having a happy child who enjoys learning and who is around people who see their potential and they're in an environment that kind of nurtures and brings out their potential as well, rather than kind of stifles them down and limits them almost. So I'm sorry I can't answer that one more specifically. Um, but if you do want a more specific answer like this for your child, you can always book a free consultation with me where we can talk about this in far more depth. So, another question that came up actually more than once was questions around what does a communication focused homeschool day look like? And how is it different from teaching subjects or following a curriculum? And this one is really, really interesting to me because obviously this is what I do every day. This is kind of like a big passion of mine. I'm actually going to use my whiteboard to explain this. So, there are kind of two parts of this that are really, really important here. The first one is if your child, to me, is struggling to communicate, that should be like your number one goal over anything else. Subjects, curriculum, learning how to even read, learning how to write, learning math, learning the periodic table, learning about the Civil War, like all of these things come after your child's communication. Because your child's communication is their key to living a fulfilling life. Okay. I'm just going to let that sink in for you, right? That is such a huge, huge thing. So, that firstly is why I believe that if your child struggles to communicate, homeschooling should be communication first, right? Because at school, that is not going to be happening. they're going to be spending 6 hours or more a day not focusing on this number one key skill or key brain function that they need to develop. And then number two, what communication actually is it's not just one thing. I'm gonna draw a very, very bad person here. So communication is actually a process, okay, that involves two areas of your brain communicating to each other. And the first part of this process is actually comprehension. So either listening to something or reading something and turning that very, very quickly into meaning, almost like a movie in your mind. Okay. Whatever that movie looks like. I can't draw very well on here. But I went away this weekend. And if I was to describe to you the dinner I went out with my family for, and I sit here and I told you a couple of paragraphs, and I described it to you, very, very, very quickly, you'd be able to turn those words that I was talking into an image, like a movie in your mind, okay? Because your words are being turned into pictures, okay? Then, say you like the sound of that weekend away and you wanted to go and tell your friend or your partner and say, oh, I think this sounds really good. You could then turn those pictures back out into words to describe it to them. Okay. And this is essentially what communication is. And there can be a breakdown in any part of that process. But let's talk about this first part. Because this first part, yes, it's important for communication, but it's also important for learning too, right? Sitting in front of a classroom or listening to a lesson or learning something on YouTube or reading a paragraph in a book or reading a novel. All of these parts are learning through processing language, turning that language into meaning. Then, when you learn, you then have to show that you've learned it through answering questions, writing an essay, giving a presentation. So, without this foundation, this cognition-communication connection of being able to turn words into pictures and back out into words, that foundation of learning isn't there either. So, yes, this is very, very important for communication. And I believe communication is the most important thing. But the brilliant thing is this is also a really good foundation for learning too. So I hope that was a helpful kind of explanation for you. All right, let's look at what some other questions were. Okay, so this was also one that came up. And yeah, this is also a little bit hard to kind of answer on such a broad spectrum, but people were saying like how overwhelmed they are by the curriculum options out there and how they want to support something that supports both learning and communication growth. So, yeah, it's really, really, really hard because I find that now with like social media and the internet, you start going down a rabbit hole and then an algorithm picks you up. And then suddenly you're bombarded with all of these ads. Like right now, I don't know how, but I'm bombarded by like these Korean skincare ads, like promising me like glass skin, and constantly now tempted to try these like magic face masks. But I can imagine that if you're homeschooling your autistic child, you're probably getting bombarded with curriculum ads, and it can become really, really confusing. Who do you trust? What do you go with for your child? So, what I would suggest for this is, in my experience, and I've got a lot of experience with working in a school for autistic children as well. And the school that I was working in was very, very highly individualized for each child, to the point where we were individualizing the curriculum for them, because every child is unique. And quite honestly, I don't believe you can just pick a curriculum and like force a child to go through it exactly how the curriculum is laid out. So if I were in your shoes, and I mean I kind of am because I'm going to be homeschooling my daughter this year, I wouldn't worry too much about getting the perfect curriculum, because the curriculum is less important than knowing your child and how to support their learning, if that makes sense. So, what I personally would be looking for is something that supports you as a parent and what you need to become the person your child needs in this situation. Because curriculum wise, you don't need that much. You don't need all the bells and whistles to teach your child. You don't need a bunch of books and materials and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm going to be homeschooling my daughter this year. Like, I'm literally buying zero materials. Like, none. I'm literally going to be using my brain and what I know. And I get it. I'm in a privileged position because I have a lot of experience and expertise in this. But this is what I'm telling you guys is get the support and get the coaching so you're not wasting a bunch of money on all of these resources that aren't individualized for your kid. So I hope that makes sense. And yet again, if you want more specifics for your situation, just book a call with me. Okay, so this is another one that kind of links to like the one before. And this is also for people who are on the fence. And this question is, I've heard people say homeschooling is better for autistic kids, but honestly, how do I know if this is actually true for my child? And yet again, there is so much that is kind of put out there on the internet where people are saying things like it's fact. And I am a big, big, big supporter of homeschooling. But there are also very many pros for schools as well. And I know kids that are also really happy in a school. So honestly, how do you know if that's actually true for your child? Look at your child. Are they making progress? Okay. Month to month, are they making progress? Are you happy with the progress they're making? Like, are they keeping up with their peers, or are they slowly falling further and further behind? Okay, because you don't really want the gap to continue getting wider because it means school's going to get harder and harder. How do they feel about going to school in the morning? How do they feel when they get home from school in the evening time? Are there any kind of behaviors or worrying things that you're seeing that is kind of just like sending off these kind of little red flags in your mind with your child. So, what I would say is it's not that it's an autistic child thing at all. It is looking at your child as a human and thinking, is this environment benefiting them or is it not benefiting them and why? Okay. All right. Okay. I've got a few more. I've got a few more. All right. Let me read this one. Okay. This is one that I get a lot in my program as well. So every time I try to teach my child, they either zone out, argue, or walk away. How am I supposed to get through a whole school day like this? Okay, that's a really, really valid question. And I expect that you're kind of scared. So, really, it depends on the age of your child, first of all, right? A whole school day at school is not necessarily a whole school day at home. Okay. So the hours of learning at school might look like 6 hours, but that's not necessarily the case when you're doing it at home. It might just be 1 to 2 hours of very kind of specific directed learning that could be broken up throughout the day as well, interspersed with activities that your child really likes to do, which I highly encourage doing things that your child excels at and enjoys. So, first off, don't feel like you have to sit there at a desk for 6 hours with your child doing language arts, history, geography, science, math, and struggle through it. Second off, I want you to picture where your child is at, okay? So, obviously, all children are different, but your child might be coming into homeschooling, right? If you have chosen to homeschool your child, they might be coming into this situation because they've had a negative experience at school. Thus, they have negative associations with learning already. Okay, so there might be certain triggers, sitting down at a desk with a book, getting pens out, and whatnot, that are triggering a fight or flight response for them. Okay, so this is going to be time, effort to make it safe for them, effort to kind of bring their body back down to kind of like a safe, calm level. That might be what is going on. And then lastly, it could also be learning is hard, right? Which could have been why school was really negative for them. If we go back to this, they have a breakdown in their cognition communication connection. So they're not able to quickly process language. They might process the first few things that you're saying, and then they zone out and they're not able to process the rest. It's almost like if I suddenly switched to speaking German right now, in a few minutes, a lot of you guys are going to start thinking, okay, what am I going to start cooking for dinner tonight? Ooh, what are we going to do this weekend? Right? Because my words won't be forming an image for you guys anymore. You're not going to be having any meaning from what I'm saying. So your brain is going to go somewhere else. This is what is happening for a child who has a weakness in their cognition communication connection. Therefore, it is like they didn't hear you. They technically heard you, but they didn't process it. So there's no meaning or understanding there. So in this case, you have to go to the root and you have to build their cognition-communication connection in their brain, which is the pathway between the Wernicke's and the Broca's area, which is weaker in autistic children. So you have to do exercises to make this stronger, which if you're homeschooling your autistic child, this is the best time to do it and to make it a priority. All right, I think I have time for one last question. So we've tried different homeschool programs before, and honestly, none of them worked. What makes your approach any different? Okay, that is an interesting question. And if you're here, my question back would be, why do you feel they didn't work? Like what was it about them that didn't fit you as a family? Um, but I can tell you what I feel makes what I do different. I would say there's kind of a few main ways. So, oh, not that big. Firstly, I would say it is brain-based, focused on um, making changes to the way the brain processes language for communication. Okay, so it is not like a curriculum-based approach. It supports curriculum and supports learning, but it is not just another curriculum. It is really focused on actually making brain-based changes in a child that is supported by neuro research. Okay. So you can actually look at the brains of autistic children and see these pathway between the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area growing after doing therapy like this. So the second way that it's different is the lesson plans. They're written just for the child on a weekly basis. Okay, so what that means is it's not one curriculum fits all. It's individualized, but also responding to their needs week by week. Okay, so say we have Tommy. Tommy is a child, and Tommy's going to be growing and developing because he's doing this new program that is working on developing his brain for communication. So we want Tommy to be progressing every week. So in order to do that, he needs a lesson plan that's going to help him make these big changes. That needs to be individualized just for him. So I doubt there's another curriculum out there that does that. I don't know, but I don't think so. And then another big thing is the support. So I actively coach and guide the parents because to me, it's not just about the child. The child is important, but the parents are just as important because if you are homeschooling your child, it is really, really hard, especially if you don't have like 15 years of experience. And it's like not even experience teaching. You could be a teacher and still not know how to homeschool your autistic child in a really effective way. It is having experience with deep, deep knowledge how to support their specific needs. So what I do is I support to coach and guide the parents so that they can kind of weave these kind of therapeutic approaches throughout the day with their child. They can have these lesson plans that target communication, and they can also use these approaches in other areas of homeschool. Okay, so how can you use this to support their English literature? You absolutely can. To support science, to support math. All of these areas can be massively improved as well, especially if the parent knows how best to work with their child. Okay. So I think they are the main three ways that this is different to a typical curriculum that is out there. And yet again, you can book a free call with me if you'd like to know what this would look like for your family specifically, because yet again, this is super, super broad, but this looks different for every single family because every single family is doing homeschooling differently, right? Because it's about what the child needs, about what the family needs, how the family is doing it. So, yeah. So it's been great going through these questions today. I'm going to put the link to book a call with me underneath this video. So please go ahead if you would like to have more information. And yeah, have a good day.